If you've tuned into this video, I hope you've gotten a raise. So congratulations. We are talking today about what to do when you get a raise, because a lot of people will live paycheck to paycheck and increase their spending to basically just meet their new income. If you've clicked on this video, clearly you want a different way. You might be a resident who is about to be an attending, coming into double, triple, quadruple your money. You might be a mid-career professional who is finally hitting your peak earning years and you got a raise to prove it. Or you're just, like I said, somebody who wants to stop living paycheck to paycheck and actually get ahead. So I'm going to give you 5 essential steps to consider when you get a raise and what to do, how to think about it, so that that new raise does not just inflate your lifestyle, but it actually goes to making you improve your lifestyle. My first tip is to just pause. Take a breather, and instead of thinking about all the things you can do with this money and trying to break it down, just pause for a second and basically think about your priorities. I recently got a raise, so I got a recent 15% raise last month, in fact. So last month was really cool because, when you see that paycheck increase, it's great until you're like, it's not as much as I thought it would be. But anyway, I was thinking before that raise, when I get a raise, I'll pay for the subscription car wash so I can take my car and get it washed whenever I need to. I have an old Toyota Camry named Cammy. She's a great gal, but the fact that I was gonna get myself into a subscription, congratulations to myself for getting a raise, was just like me inflating my lifestyle. And honestly, it's not like I have like a Mercedes or a G-Wagon or whatever. I have a Camry that can be dirty and I really don't care. I'm not a car person. So when I sat down and kind of reevaluated the way I feel about things, I was like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Clearly I'm gonna reconsider where my thoughts are, because I do have clear savings priorities and spending priorities, and it's not to have my car be clean all the time. I can take it somewhere and get it washed when I need to, which I really actually need to do. Anyway, so yeah, first step is just to pause and think, because your mind will go as it should and consider so many different options for spending that it's ridiculous. The next step is to try to figure out what you're going to get in your paycheck, because we all like the way that gross income looks. When you see that gross monthly wage, I'm always like, dang, I wish I had that. That is what I'm always trying to achieve with every pay raise. Anyway, it's hard to actually figure out what you are gonna get in your actual paycheck. So I always go and just Google the state I live in and net pay calculator. Editing Chrissy could not make this make sense, so I'm doing a voiceover. You are going to use a calculator online using your state for your net pay. You're going to use your gross pay from the raise you're going to have. So if it was $100,000, you are going to put that in and you're going to get your calculated net pay that will be in your paycheck. Then you're going to use your current salary, which is like $80,000. You'll put that in the ADP calculator using all the little things and prompts, and then you'll get a calculated net pay. That calculated net pay is probably not anywhere close to what you're actually getting now. But if you subtract that gross pay that you will get from what you're currently getting, you'll get a ballpark of what you're going to have. So which brings me to step 3, which is deciding where your money will go. You might get a ballpark from step 2, but you really want to consider, what are your spending goals? And mine is not to go to the car wash and have a shiny Camry, okay? Mine is to beef up my savings. I want my emergency fund to be increased, and then I want to start contributing more to my brokerage. I had an order that I want to go through, but I now have decided to fund both. So for my pay increase, I have $600 going to my emergency fund so I can get that to the level I want to be to, which is like a year of spending. And now I'm doing about $500 to my brokerage. And I just started that this month. I had always had this goal of doing all these things so that I could start paying my mortgage off early. But I know at my age, it is so important, and I'm in my 40s, to really get my retirement savings up and my investments going. Or going more strongly. So that's what I'm doing now. But me, after residency, I doubled my income. I'm a pediatrician, so it didn't like quadruple, quintuple, whatever that some specialties do. I doubled my income. And at that time, I was going from residency where I was spending like less than, I don't know how much money. I probably showed you in the past some of my budgets in a past video somewhere, but I I was not spending much on groceries, not spending much on restaurants or eating out, doing things with friends. So I think that it's appropriate for me to have increased my budget for those categories. And sometimes that's what a raise is there for, because you are going from a different life to a different lifestyle. So again, it's important to focus on your priorities, because I could have gone ham and made myself $1,000 restaurant budget and everything like that. But I just increased it to the level where I'd be able to go out a couple times a week with friends or whatever and feel comfortable that I was living my life. I definitely increased my shopping budget, even though I don't usually, or I hopefully didn't spend it that much. After I paid off my loan, I definitely started spending a little more on clothing because I sold so many clothes to pay off my loan anyway. But yeah, different times of your life, it might be the time to inflate your lifestyle a little bit, because you might have been living on, what does Dave Ramsey say, like rice and beans and rice for a while. And for me, this time, it wasn't appropriate for me to inflate my lifestyle. I have a certain budget for clothes and things like that. I mean, I don't really buy any clothes. I have a budget for eating out. My biggest budget is probably going to the gym and, having my Peloton and doing those kind of things. So more like health, fitness, and maybe groceries, but I'm still trying to spend less on that anyway. Step 3 is deciding where your money will go in a way that you shouldn't be. If you've been living like a med student resident, for the medical example, then as you're attending, it's great to kind of stay within that resident med student mentality, especially if you have a lot of loans to pay off and you're focused on doing that. But it also might be appropriate to grow slowly into that income and give yourself a little more freedom, because you're no longer making 60 grand, you're making 125 grand or whatever it is. The 4th goal is to focus on your financial goals. And I've kind of just talked about this in step 3 with my own example of knowing that I want to grow my emergency fund before I really focus on pushing everything towards my brokerage account, because I am already fully funding my 401k, my Roth IRA, all those things. But for somebody else, it could be that you have a fully funded emergency fund and you want to work on funding that brokerage, or you are planning a trip to Hawaii 2027 or bust and you want to start funding that. So having different funnels where you want your money to go is part of, I guess it's like tip 3 and 4 are kind of together, because you're focusing on your financial goals and you're deciding where your money will go. But you can also attack multiple goals by, for instance, doing like a 50-30-20 rule, where 50% of a pay increase will go directly to savings, 30% will go to that savings goal, to that Hawaii or bust goal, and 20% will just go into, I want to live a little bit of a better life. I want to get coffee when I want it. I want to buy some shoes once a month or something like that. So in the example of like a $2,000 raise, you'd have $1,000 that is going straight to your investments. You'd have, and this is assuming, of course, that you're already maxing out your 401k or something like that. If you weren't, it would be increasing that 401k contribution so that you can match and maybe do some more. But half of that going to your investments, and then if you're doing 30% going towards that savings goal, that would be like $600 that you're spending in the $2,000 example. That $600 is going towards Hawaii or bust, and then the 20% is going towards Starbucks, whatever you want, which would be like $200, which some people probably actually do. That's one way to consider what to do with that money, however big the 4% raise or like the 15, 20, 30% raise. That's one way to break it down, to make sure that you're saving a good deal of that money, but also you can feel like you got a raise. Let's see. I think the 5th step is an important step, because you're really considering the ramifications of like balling out, like going hog wild. And hog wild to me would be like, okay, now that I'm making this, if in the example of like a 4% raise, I'm making an extra $400 or something like that. I can afford that car payment on this, top of the line car that I was looking at. I can afford now that apartment that was a little out of my budget. I can afford that now. And of course, like everybody wants to buy a house. So you can also think about that mortgage payment that will be affordable now. So if you are increasing your lifestyle on these big budget items, you often think only of the payment and stop thinking about like, how is this going to affect you? So if you're getting a luxury car it's only $400 extra dollars a month, like you can definitely afford it. You have to think about the premium gas it's taking. You have to think about about washing it, because you can't have a dirty Mercedes like you can have a dirty Camry. If you are taking it to get maintained, it's going to be extra. And of course, if you're buying it, the property tax is going to be much more than whatever car you came from. So that's like the hidden cost of buying a car. And of course, like buying a house, we all know how many hidden costs there are. You can see my video about all the costs, decor, and just like the mortgage, everything I spent to get my townhouse. But you have to think long and hard before getting some of these big budget items that you think are just the payment, but are actually so many more things wrapped into that. Just in closing, a raise is such a good opportunity, but only if you make it work for you. I hope this video helped you just kind of consider the different things that you should consider about where you're going to put your money when you're getting an increase, and trying not to just inflate the way you're living. Like, subscribe, comment, tell me what first thing that you think about when you get a raise, like your ideal thing and the thing you would actually do. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you have a great day.